There is a reality surrounding you right now that existed before your birth and will continue long after you are gone. A world alive with beings who see you while you cannot see them, moving through the same earth yet hidden by a veil thicker than darkness itself. Islamic teaching does not introduce this as legend or symbolism, but as truth revealed from the unseen, a truth that unsettles comfort and challenges certainty. The jinn are not shadows of imagination or creatures of folklore. They are a creation of Allah mentioned repeatedly in the Quran, described with detail, purpose, and accountability. Ignoring them does not erase their existence, and misunderstanding them has shaped fear for centuries. This unseen world is not distant or detached. It runs parallel to ours, sharing the same spaces, the same nights, the same earth beneath our feet. And once you understand this, the way you look at reality itself begins to change. Before we go deeper, comment below where you're watching this from, and if you're seeking knowledge that goes beyond myths and fear, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what comes next. Islam presents the jinn as a deliberate creation, not an accident, and not a test for humans alone, but beings with purpose, responsibility, and consequence. The Quran speaks to them directly, records their voices, their reactions, their belief and disbelief, making it impossible to dismiss them as symbolic language. They live, they die, they worship, they rebel, and they will be judged just as humans will be judged. This alone destroys the idea that humans are the only beings with moral responsibility on earth. The unseen is not empty. It is structured, ordered, and governed by divine law. Jinn societies exist with their own hierarchies and influences, yet they remain bound by limits they cannot cross without Allah's permission. The fear surrounding them often comes not from what Islam teaches, but from how little people actually understand what Islam reveals. When knowledge replaces speculation, mystery transforms into awareness, and fear loses its grip. Long before the first human breath was taken, before Adam was shaped from clay, the jinn already existed upon the earth. Islamic teaching states they were created from smokeless fire, a substance unlike anything humans know, neither solid nor gentle, fast in nature and intense in energy. This origin explains much about their abilities and behavior, their speed, their invisibility, and their adaptability, yet it does not elevate them above humans in rank. Creation does not equal superiority, and power does not equal honor. Just as humans were honored through knowledge and guidance, jinn were tested through free will. They were not created as forces of chaos, nor as servants to humanity, but as worshippers meant to recognize their creator. Fire does not make them evil, just as clay does not make humans pure. What defines both creations is choice, and it is this shared responsibility that binds the human world and the jinn world closer than most people realize. The Quran makes a powerful statement by placing humans, jinn, and angels side by side, each created differently, each serving a different role. Angels do not disobey. Humans struggle between obedience and desire, and jinn exist in that same space of decision. This is why some jinn rise through faith while others fall into rebellion. Their creation from fire did not free them from accountability. It placed them directly within it. When Allah commanded worship, the command was not exclusive. It echoed across the seen and unseen. Understanding how the jinn were created is not about fascination with the strange. It is about recognizing that Allah's creation is far broader than human perception. And once that truth settles in, the question is no longer whether jinn exist, but how much of reality we have ignored simply because we could not see it. Freedom is the defining line that separates mere existence from true accountability, and Islamic teaching places the jinn firmly on the side of beings who choose rather than beings who are programmed. They are not driven by instinct alone, nor are they locked into obedience like angels. Instead, they think, decide, resist, submit, and rebel. This free will is the reason the Quran speaks to them with warning and promise, reward and punishment. Jinn experience belief, doubt, arrogance, humility, fear, and hope in ways strikingly similar to humans. They form communities where leaders emerge, followers imitate, and traditions develop, some guiding toward righteousness and others pulling toward corruption. Just as humans influence one another, jinn influence their own kind, spreading guidance or misguidance through words, whispers, and example. This unseen society is not chaotic. It is structured, layered, and deeply affected by the same moral struggle that defines human history. The Quran itself preserves a moment where jinn encountered divine revelation and were shaken by it. Upon hearing the Quran, some jinn recognized its truth instantly, declaring that it guides to righteousness and believing without hesitation. They did not remain silent spectators. They returned to their people as warners, urging belief and submission to Allah. This moment reveals something profound. Guidance is not exclusive to humans, and revelation echoes beyond the visible world. Jinn are capable of sincerity and devotion, capable of humility before truth, and capable of transformation when confronted with it. Their belief was not symbolic or forced. It was a conscious decision made through understanding and acceptance. This challenges the distorted image of jinn as creatures drawn only to darkness and deception. Yet where there is free will, there is also defiance. Among the jinn are those who reject truth not because it is unclear, but because arrogance blinds them. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood figures in all of Islamic theology, Iblis. Contrary to widespread belief, Iblis was not an angel who fell from grace, but a jinn who rose through worship before falling through pride. His knowledge and devotion elevated him among the angels, but his origin remained distinct. When Allah commanded the angels to bow to Adam, honoring knowledge and divine wisdom, Iblis refused. His refusal was not born from confusion, but from arrogance, claiming superiority based on his creation from fire over Adam's creation from clay. This single moment exposed the danger of pride, not just for jinn, but for all who believe their origin or status makes them better than others. Iblis's rebellion marked the beginning of a conscious mission to mislead. He did not deny Allah's existence, nor did he reject divine authority outright. Instead, he challenged Allah through disobedience and blame. He asked for respite, time to prove that humans would fail when given choice, and that arrogance would infect them, just as it had infected him. This request was granted as part of the divine test, not as approval of his actions. From that moment, Iblis became the leader of the shayateen, jinn who chose rebellion and dedicated themselves to misguidance. Shayateen are not a separate creation. They are jinn who crossed a moral line and embraced corruption willingly. Their goal is not to force humans into sin, but to whisper, beautify falsehood, and weaken resolve, exploiting desire and distraction. Understanding this distinction changes everything. Not every jinn is a shaitan, and not every unseen influence is a supernatural attack. Evil in Islam is not a mysterious force acting without reason. It is the result of choice, arrogance, and refusal to submit to truth. Iblis stands as a warning that knowledge without humility leads to destruction, and worship without obedience is hollow. The story of jinn free will and Iblis's fall is not meant to terrify, but to teach. It mirrors the human struggle with ego, desire, and accountability. In understanding their story, we are quietly being taught our own. Islam draws a clear boundary when it comes to interaction between humans and jinn, not because such interaction is impossible, but because it is dangerous in ways most people underestimate. The unseen is not a playground, and curiosity without guidance often leads to harm rather than insight. Throughout Islamic teaching, humans are warned against attempting to seek help, information, or power from jinn, whether through rituals, charms, fortune-telling, or supposed spiritual shortcuts. These practices do not open doors to hidden wisdom, they open doors to deception. Jinn, like humans, can lie, manipulate, exaggerate, and exploit weakness. When humans approach them seeking advantage, the imbalance of knowledge and perception almost always results in harm, confusion, or spiritual loss. What appears as assistance is often a trap, and what feels like control is usually an illusion. Islam exposes a crucial truth that strips away fear. Jinn do not possess independent knowledge of the unseen. They do not know the future. They do not know destiny. And they do not have access to divine secrets unless Allah allows it. Much of what is attributed to them comes from observation, speed, and long lifespans, not supernatural omniscience. Before revelation was protected, some jinn would attempt to steal fragments of information, only to mix truth with layers of lies. This is why fortune-telling and occult practices are condemned, not because they work reliably, but because they distort truth and weaken faith. The real danger is not physical harm alone, but the gradual erosion of trust in Allah. When humans seek answers from creation instead of the Creator, they place themselves in spiritual vulnerability. Islam also acknowledges that jinn can influence humans, but not in the exaggerated, uncontrollable way often portrayed. Their influence is primarily subtle, working through whispers, suggestions, and emotional manipulation. Fear, anger, desire, and despair are entry points where influence becomes easier. This is why Islam emphasizes awareness over obsession, grounding believers in remembrance rather than paranoia. Jinn cannot overpower a believer protected by faith and consciousness of Allah. They exploit negligence, not strength. Understanding this removes the idea that humans are helpless victims in an unseen war. Possession is recognized in Islamic tradition, but it is neither random nor unstoppable. It is treated as a serious condition, not entertainment or spectacle. Possession does not mean loss of dignity or worth, and it is not proof of weak faith, but it does require spiritual treatment rooted in sincerity and consistency. Islam does not prescribe fear-based rituals or mysterious practices, but clear, direct acts of worship and remembrance. The Quran itself is described as healing, not metaphorically, but spiritually. Its words carry authority because they are divine, not because of human performance or technique. Protection in Islam is proactive, not reactive. Daily remembrance, prayer, conscious living, and recitation form a shield that jinn cannot penetrate. Ayat al-Kursi is described as a barrier that prevents shayateen from approaching until morning. Surahs al-Falaq and An-Nas are taught as direct refuge from unseen harm and whispered evil. These are not charms or spells, they are declarations of dependence on Allah alone. When spoken with belief, they realign the believer with divine protection. Fear weakens this shield, but certainty strengthens it. The deeper lesson is that Islam does not teach believers to obsess over jinn, but to outgrow fear of them. When faith is strong, the unseen loses its power to intimidate. Jinn exist, influence exists, and harm exists, but none of it operates outside Allah's control. The believer is not meant to chase the unseen, but to stand firmly in guidance. When that balance is achieved, the jinn become what they truly are in Islamic teaching: another creation under the same authority, bound by the same ultimate judgment, and powerless before sincere faith. Much of what people believe about jinn today did not come from revelation, but from stories shaped by fear, culture, and imagination. Over time, these ideas were repeated so often that fiction began to feel like fact. Folklore blended with superstition, and entertainment amplified the most extreme images until the jinn became symbols of horror rather than creations with purpose. Movies, novels, and viral stories portray them as unstoppable monsters, wish-granting spirits, or chaotic forces haunting abandoned places. Islam cuts through this distortion with clarity, reminding us that exaggeration is one of the greatest tools of fear. The more mysterious something appears, the more power people give it, and this is exactly how truth becomes buried beneath spectacle. Cultural traditions across the world added layers that Islam never taught. Certain places were labeled cursed, certain sounds were blamed on jinn, and ordinary misfortune was attributed to unseen attacks. Over time, accountability shifted away from human action and towards supernatural blame. Islam does not deny the unseen, but it refuses to let it become an excuse for ignorance or irresponsibility. Not every hardship is spiritual, and not every fear has an unseen cause. By grounding belief in revelation rather than rumor, Islam restores balance and protects the mind from paranoia. The Quran presents jinn as restrained by divine law, not wandering freely without limits. They cannot harm whom Allah protects, and they cannot cross boundaries set by their Creator. This removes the illusion of power that popular culture assigns to them. The unseen is not chaotic, it is ordered. When this order is forgotten, fear fills the gap. Islam replaces fear with understanding and replaces obsession with purpose. At its core, learning about the jinn is not about the jinn at all. It is about recognizing that creation is far greater than what human eyes can perceive. Humans are not the only beings tested, not the only ones accountable, and not the only ones commanded to worship. This realization humbles the ego and expands awareness. The unseen reminds humanity that existence does not revolve around comfort or control, but around submission and responsibility. The story of the jinn mirrors the human story in striking ways. Both were given free will, both were shown guidance, and both were warned against arrogance. Some chose humility and rose in rank, while others chose pride and fell. The jinn are a reflection, not a distraction. Their existence reinforces the reality of choice and consequence. They remind humans that knowledge without obedience is dangerous, and awareness without humility leads to ruin. Islam does not call believers to fear what they cannot see, but to trust the one who sees everything. When Allah is placed at the center, the unseen finds its proper place. Fear turns into awareness, curiosity turns into wisdom, and mystery turns into meaning. The truth about the jinn is not meant to haunt the mind, but to anchor the heart. And in that understanding lies the ultimate freedom, knowing that nothing in the seen or unseen exists outside the knowledge, power, and mercy of Allah.